When you are trying to sell a product or a service, not everybody thinks the same way that you do. So you have to be mindful of that. You have to pay attention to what other people are saying and how they're feeling and how they're going to receive a message.
You're listening to Stories from the Top, an inside guide to better business development.
So we're here with Katie Martin, the Director of Marketing for First Resource Bank. Katie, thanks so much for coming on the show. To start out, do you want to introduce yourself for people who don't know who you are?
Sure. Well, again, I'm Katie Martin, and I am the Marketing Director at First Resource Bank, headquartered in Exton, Pennsylvania. I've been in the industry a little over 20 years in bank marketing. I also volunteer a lot. I'm in the Rotary Club of Westchester, which is the most amazing Rotary Club in the world. And I am an active member and board member for the Exton Region Chamber of Commerce. I am on the advisory committee with the Salvation Army of Westchester. I'm also on an advisory committee with Mighty Writers and Tough Kenneman. So I've got a lot of fun community activities going on, and I'm excited to be here today. So thank you.
Of course. Yeah, sounds like you're busy. So to start, we kind of wanted to get a little bit of your background. What did you originally go to school for?
So I originally went to school thinking that I was going to get involved in political science. Oddly enough, I grew up in a family that was very financially, I don't know if motivated is the word. I guess everybody's financially motivated, but had a strong financial background. My grandparents started an investment company before I was born, and that really became the family business. My aunts and uncles worked there. My mom worked there. So it just seemed like growing up, either at some point I was going to go down that path. My father was a plumber, so as much as I love indoor plumbing, I don't know that was really something that I had my heart set on. And so I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. But one of the things that always interested me was politics and history. So, despite having these other influences, I went to school for that. And then little by little kind of made my way around back into finance. I can remember while I was going to school, I worked in retail. And I had a girlfriend who she ended up leaving retail and she went to work for a bank. And she said, Katie, you should consider this. Like, even if it's just something you do till you get done school. And so I did. And so I got started in banking back in the early 2000s. And when I initially started, I started more in the branch side of things. I was, I did some teller work. I did management on the branch side, sales, some little bit of lending. And then one day I was working for a company and a position opened up in their marketing department. And it was all of the things that I was really good at. And so I remember applying for the position, and there was a couple other people who had applied at the time, not really knowing if that was going to pan out. But for me, if nothing else, it was kind of that first step out of my comfort zone where it was doing something that I hadn't really done before and that nobody was really pushing me to do. It was just something that I was doing on my own. And fortunately it worked out. And then here I am 1,000 years later, continuing in the marketing field.
What kind of things did they have you doing at your entry-level marketing position?
I can remember back when I started, it might have just been like simple things like helping to gather items for an event. Or, I wasn't necessarily putting together the whole marketing plan at that point in time, but maybe it was like bits and pieces. Maybe I was working on a specific piece of a campaign, or I was the person in charge of handling our community outreach from the advertising standpoint in terms of like, they needed a program ad for something. So can you handle this piece? Or we need people to attend an event. And so a lot of times people don't seem to equate the two. They think, people attending an event, well, that's not marketing. But from my standpoint, the people who I work with, they are the best marketing tool that we have. They're hard workers, they relate to the customer. And I think no matter where you work, you want to talk to people and you want to work with people who you have things in common with. They can relate to you. They can understand where your business is at that point in time, or if it's not your business on the personal side, they've been there. They've been in your shoes. And so when you send people to an event, you want to send people who are outgoing, who are willing to talk to strangers. and make them feel comfortable, and, help them to understand that if they come and work with your company, that they're going to be working with somebody that they can trust.
So how did you go from a position of being just kind of like an entry-level marketer to one of the senior members of the marketing team?
I had a lot of really great teachers and mentors along the way. And some were good teachers in the sense that they taught me things that I didn't know. They would talk to me about, we would look at ads together and what worked and what didn't work and why, and what they liked about an ad and what I liked about an ad, and we would kind of morph those together, and they would find opportunities for me to learn more. I would go to training classes. I think it's interesting that sometimes people go to school and they think, oh, like once I get my piece of paper, I'm done, and then I'll just start working. But that's not really how it works in the real world. I mean, I think we all know that you never stop learning, and especially in marketing, it's always changing. And so I think the good mentors that I had from the teaching standpoint were helping me to understand that things are always changing, and they allowed me to embrace these new forms of media. But then I also had other people who taught me in a different way. Maybe they weren't good managers, and they taught me about the type of person I didn't want to be, and what I didn't respond well to, and how to deal with difficult people. So I think, to get to the level that I'm at now, I think one of the benefits that I had was I'm a good learner. I'm a good listener. And especially in this role, I think you have to be, because, when you are trying to sell a product or a service, not everybody thinks the same way that you do. And so you have to be mindful of that. You have to pay attention to what other people are saying and how they're feeling and how they're going to receive a message. And so I think for me, along the way in my career, that's a lot of what I was doing. I was picking up on, what people were sharing with me or trying to teach me. And sometimes they weren't trying to teach me anything, and I was learning in the process. And I think that kind of helped me as I tried to deliver messages, is how will somebody receive this? And what's going to be most beneficial for them.
Yeah, marketing's always evolving and changing. That's like with us. It's like every year it's like, all right, what's going to be the new thing to do this year? AI, obviously, since the pandemic's been a big thing to try to keep up with, but it's always shifting. And if you're not in that learning mindset, it's a nightmare to try to, like we had a client who their only form of marketing was a magazine that they would put an ad in every month. And it's like, they've been doing that for since the 70s. And we were trying to help them move into the digital online space. And it was such a big jump for them mentally that they were really struggling with it has to look like the magazine. They just didn't understand how to switch to it. They had stayed in that old lane for way too long.
Well, and I think it's scary. It's kind of like you don't want to put something out there and then there's that fear that you won't get it back. Like I remember, back when text messaging became a thing, or sending messages or sending pictures or whatever, and people would say be careful what you send on your phone, because once it's out there, or once you post something on the internet, it's out there forever. So I think, especially if you're a business owner, there's that fear. Like if you've always done magazine ads, and let's say you've been in business, since the 70s or, the early 80s, and you're not used to promoting your company in that way, well, what if something's wrong? How do you retract that? Or, there's unintended consequences sometimes of putting something out there. You may have the best intentions in your advertising, but you never know who's going to take something that you share with the world and pick it apart and turn it into something that it was never intended to be. So I can appreciate that from anybody that you deal with or I deal with, that there's the fear there.
Yeah, it seems like there's always two groups of people whenever there's a new technology. One person looks at it like this is an amazing new opportunity, and the other group is looking at it like these are all the possible things that could go wrong. We have to steer clear of this or prevent it from happening. So what's your approach to that when new technology comes? Like, do you embrace it? Do you try to run towards it? Or are you leery of it, or kind of proceed cautiously?
I would say I proceed cautiously. So I know before we started the podcast recording today, Jeremy, you were talking to me about, different things that I might listen to or not listen to. And so one of the things that I share with Jeremy is that I don't always have the time to listen to everything or to consume as much information as I would like to, or that's out there, because there's just so much. So for example, I mean, I don't want to give any of these platforms credit or not give them credit, but one of the newer platforms in the past few years has been TikTok. Okay. You know, people are out there making TikTok videos about everything. But I proceed with caution. You know, right now my company is not doing anything on TikTok. It's not because it's a bad platform, but I feel like I really need to understand a platform well before I'm ready to jump feet first into it. So it's really about having the time to invest to get to learn those platforms better. So I do, you know, I'll go on there, I'll play around a little bit, you know, I'll make videos with my dog. I don't necessarily post them, but I'm learning these different pieces of technology because it's important. They're not going away. And regardless of whether or not I use them in my own personal life and like them, it doesn't matter because there's a whole world out there that's using it. So I think for me, I proceed with caution. But I think you always have to move forward. You always have to be investing a little bit of time in learning all these various platforms, because whether or not you think they're great, someone does. And it doesn't necessarily mean you should be spending your entire budget on them. But maybe there's, you know, again, maybe there's something to be said about going out of your comfort zone and just trying something new. For a lot of people, it's been advantageous. And, you know, you hear about people, oh, I learned this on TikTok. Or, you know, it's not just people creating videos about their dog. It's people actually sharing real information. So there's a need for these various platforms, and they will continue to grow. And, you know, as marketers, we have to continue to adapt and meet people where they are, because I don't know that people are still sitting around reading magazines. I don't know that they're not, but I think about when you go into the doctor's office. There really aren't very many magazines lying around anymore because magazines carry germs. So like the whole world is shifted, you know, and so you have to shift with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like the game with marketing. You really have two things: your time and your budget resources, and you got to choose wisely because there's so many different directions you can go with anything. So back to your kind of career story. How did you get to First Resource Bank from DNB First, and what was that transition like?
Sure. So towards the end of my time with DNB First, I remember feeling really stuck. I didn't feel like I had a place to go with my career. And it wasn't because anybody told me I didn't have a place to go, but it was a small company. You know, there's only so many positions. And so somebody, and not to be too direct, but somebody either has to leave, retire, or die. And I didn't see any of those things happening. So I remember talking to my boss at the time, who was a really great person, and just kind of sharing my frustration and sharing the need to maybe do something more or have more responsibility within the company. And what I did not know at the time is that the company was in a position where they were going to sell. So all of this kind of happened in the same time frame. And I remember talking to a friend of mine who at the time worked for the bank and just expressing my frustration. And he said to me, you know, you should meet Lauren Rinaldi and Glenn Marshall. He said they started the bank that I work for, and they're amazing. And he said, I think I can get a meeting for you. I think I can set up a meeting. So I said, well, that would be great. And he did. And so I remember my first meeting was with Lauren Rinaldi and this person. And we chatted for 2 hours, and, you know, she just asked me like, well, how do you think you could help the bank? And so I shared some of my ideas with her. And again, at that time, they didn't have anybody that was really just focused on the marketing piece. There's a lot of great people at First Resource, and they were all trying to do their part to chip in. And that's one of the things that I always appreciate about small business and small companies, is that it's always all hands on deck. There's never a shortage of people willing to contribute to make the pie whole, whatever they can do, and to the best of their ability. But again, it's to the best of their ability. If you're not really used to working in the marketing field, you might not understand the importance of using the same font every time, or making sure the logo is placed in the same place, or even just whatever the message is as a whole. So when I remember chatting with her and just sharing how I could help take their marketing to the next level. And then after we met, later that day, she said, okay, well, I want you to meet with Glenn. And Glenn was the CEO at the time. And so the very next day, Glenn and I went out to the same exact restaurant that I had been to the day before. And we sat there for a couple hours and chatted. And in the end, it was a really great fit for both of us. I just remember leaving both of those interviews. There was a third interview with both of them in the same room at that time. But I remember after all of the interviews feeling like these are really good people. And they genuinely want to do the right thing. And I wouldn't say, I don't mean this in a negative way about other places that I worked for before. I don't, but I have never worked for people who cared so much about their customer. In my previous worlds, I don't want to say it was more about making the dollar, but there was more of a weighted decision on how we should make decisions based upon profitability. And I don't find that to be true at First Resource. What I've found is that when a decision needs to be made, it's always, how is this going to impact the customer? How is this going to improve the customer experience? And even when it's not dealing with the customer, even when it's dealing with, my fellow colleagues, it's always, how can we make things better for them? What's going to be the right thing to do by them? There's never a selfish decision there. And I love that. I love that it's really putting other people first and making sure that people are well taken care of. It's not, it's not just on the front line for the customer, but it's on the back end too. And through that, I feel like it creates this amazing environment where we enjoy working together. We enjoy coming to work. And I don't know that I necessarily felt that way throughout my career, but I do now.
What was the process when you came in there? If it was kind of like everyone was sharing the responsibility of marketing, how did you take the reins and actually start putting together a singular vision for that?
I think it happened little by little where I would talk to the various people who were handling different things and saying like, I can take this off your plate. Again, in a small company, you're working nonstop, which is it's not a bad thing. I mean, I may be making it sound like taxing, but it's not. I think it's like you have like this company pride. You want whatever your company puts out there to be the best. So everybody internally is working really hard. And sometimes it's hard to shut off. It's hard to like let go and maybe say like, oh, this isn't really part of my job. So I found myself just going to various people in the company who were handling different little things that were really marketing and saying, you know what, I could take this off your plate. Let me help you with this. And then eventually just by helping, it eventually transitioned to my plate. And in that process, I also started, doing some things that maybe we hadn't done before or we hadn't done in years. For example, television commercials. When I came on board, we started working with Edge of Cinema. And I know there was some discussion about potentially doing it before, but prior to me joining the bank hadn't done a television commercial in years. So I think for me, it was really just introducing some new platforms or new ways of sharing the message. And then with things that we were already doing, little by little, it was just saying, hey, let me help you. Let me take this off your plate. This is why I'm here. And sometimes it was, my boss saying to somebody like, listen, you don't need to work on this anymore. Like, this is why we have Katie. Give her this piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. What are all the different marketing channels you guys are working in right now?
So we do a lot of digital marketing, Google Ads. We've advertised on Bing, things like that. We do television advertising. We've done billboard advertising. A lot of time and money is also spent in the community. I'm a big believer in just connecting with your neighbors and connecting with the communities that you serve. So we spend a lot of time and money giving back to the community. So part of that is people volunteering, serving on the boards for various local organizations. Maybe they're in Rotary clubs like mine. Maybe they are, helping local nonprofits. And part of that is just giving back to the communities that give so much to us, that bank with us, and taking care of our neighbors. When our community does well, we do well. So it's very important to always give back in the community and invest your time and your talent and your treasure. But while you're doing those things, you're meeting people. You're building those relationships. And who doesn't want to do business with somebody who's giving back and who they can see is really just a decent person? And one of the things I always appreciate about our company is that everyone's doing it. It's not just, the entry-level person who's trying to meet people in the market. I mean, it's from top to bottom, everybody is involved in something. And they're passionate about those projects that they're involved in. So it's really refreshing to see that everybody's invested in helping our community thrive. And as a result, we end up meeting really great people. We meet local business owners. We meet people who need a hand up, and we're able to be there for them. And we're able to make great friends in the process.
So since you guys are focused really kind of hyper local, do you have any unique challenges when it comes to marketing a local bank versus just marketing as a whole?
I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is that, we're small. And sometimes people see that and they're concerned. And what they're maybe missing out on is the benefits of banking with a smaller institution. So it's helping to share that story. We have all of the technology that the big banks have, but we've got that hometown feel. If you want to talk to a person, you can pick up the phone and call us and we will answer the phone. If you want to talk to our CEO, I'll give you her phone number. There's never, you have access to everybody at a small bank, which I think is really important. But sometimes people are concerned because they think, oh, well, maybe you can't do this because of your size. And the reality is no, we can. But you get it's more like, I don't want to call it boutique banking, but it's a more of a personalized service. And so people who bank with us know, like if you have a need or you need to get in touch with somebody or you need a loan, you need a special checking account or whatever it is that you need, you have those things and you have the service that goes along with it. And it's not to say that you're not going to get service at a larger institution. You are. But one of the things that I know to be true that in the past few years I can share is, think about when we were going through the pandemic and there were these government loan programs out there, the Paycheck Protection loans, and companies needed these loans to survive. They needed to be able to pay their employees, and it was a scary time. Nobody knew what was going to happen. But a lot of times people who were banking with larger institutions struggled to get in touch with someone at their bank. They struggled to get in touch with their lender because they didn't really know them. They had maybe done a loan with this person, but the person never really checked in with them. So for us, we were calling all of our customers. And as a smaller bank, we were able to do that. We were able to reach out to all of them and help them. And we were also able to help people who never banked with us before because they knew a guy who knew a guy. They had volunteered with us in the community and they weren't able to get in touch with their bank, but they were hoping that maybe we could help them because we met them, at a chamber event, or we met them, I don't know, hanging up wreaths in Westchester or whatever it is. It was a really unique opportunity to show people where a community bank can shine. And so sometimes when people ask, why would we go with a smaller institution? Well, that's why, because when you really need to get in touch with somebody, you have that access. And you've got the access, like I said, all the way to the top of the house. The other thing too is that just like you have that access, I have that access. So questions don't go unanswered. We find the answer. We have that ability to get in touch with the right person and get in touch with them quickly.
Yeah, that's something we really love. We have multiple businesses that we're part of that are all done through First Resource, and just being able to call and get a hold of someone if there's a question or a problem or someone with a wire you're setting up, it's so nice to be able to just instantly, hello. It's actually like a real phone that just rings. It's not like a service. It's just so refreshing. We always recommend FRB, and just the fact that you guys are always out in the community too, going back to the community marketing you guys do. If you're in Chester County and you haven't heard of First Resource, like you're either blind and deaf or both, it's like you guys are everywhere. And it's so nice to see a bank that's actually out in the community and really supporting people too. It's not just, because if you go to one of those local marketing things, there's probably 6 different small localish banks there, but you guys kind of take it to the next level with supporting a lot of the nonprofits and things too, which we love. So you guys are rocking it on the community bank level. What does the future look like? Do you guys have plans to continue to grow and scale out, maybe new branches a little closer to the city, or do you guys have any kind of roadmap to where you want to go?
So we do. I don't think that we're going to be opening any, physical branches in the next few years. I know that's not quite on the horizon right this minute, but we're going to continue to invest in technology and invest in our people. So when you read the news now, you often see how a lot of institutions are closing branches. And the reason for that is people are banking online. They're embracing these digital tools, and that's wonderful. And we're embracing those digital tools. So again, we have all of the same capabilities that you can find at some of these larger institutions. And we continue to invest in the technologies to continue to give you those tools. But we also have a few branches so that when you need to come in or you want to come in, we're there for you. And even if you want us to come out, we can do that too. It's not to say that we can only meet you in one of our locations. We will meet you wherever you would like us to meet you. But there's no plans in the immediate future to open new locations, but we are always expanding our footprint through technology and through our people. We've got some people who cover Montgomery County, Delaware County, Chester County. We're all over the place. So you'll see us, and you'll continue to see us in various marketplaces. And who knows, at some point, maybe we will expand our physical footprint in terms of branches. But I know for the current time, it's really important to invest in the technology and invest in the right people who can continue to spread our message and really help, provide the best service possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that low overhead just helps you guys stay so competitive with fees and stuff. Like, you guys are so much better than any other banks. Like, we had it was Wachovia, then it became, was there anything between Wells Fargo and Wachovia? Whatever it was,
Yeah.
But it's like those giant banks just morphing and conglomerating, and it's a nightmare anytime you have to deal with anything with those. So it's very refreshing to have you guys.
Well, and I think that's part of it. It's certainly nice to have the branches to walk into, and we do. And we're conveniently located in different marketplaces so that people can have quick access to us. But we are competitive on the fees. And one of the ways to do that is by keeping our costs down. So it's oftentimes better for us to give some services away for free and pay that smaller cost than it is for us to open another physical location and have to pay all of the overhead that goes along with that.
Cool. Well, Katie, thanks so much for coming on the show. We're going to, in the next few weeks, have a couple other episodes where we're going to dive into some of the more specific things we talked about, like community marketing and taking advantage of your customers' experience to help in marketing through testimonials and stuff like that. So thank you so much for coming on the show. And if anybody wants to get in touch with you or learn more about the bank, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way for them to do that would be they can email me directly at kmartin@firstresourcebank.com, or they are welcome to call me. The best number to reach me at is 215-439-1873.
There you go. All right. Thanks, Katie.
Thanks.
Stories from the Top is your guide to successful business development. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or find Edge of Cinema on YouTube. Stories from the Top is an Edge of Cinema production, hosted by Matthew Skura and Jeremy Schmidt. To learn more or get in touch, visit edgeofcinema.com/podcast.